On a lot of modern blogs, such as a site like medium.com, you might see the length of a post in the time it takes to read it, right? In some cases, you'll see something that says it takes 30 minutes. In some cases, it'll say like 5 minutes. So what we want to do here is actually create a function or a couple of functions that can count the number of words and then put it in some sort of time frame for us. So then we can actually display that. Now, initially, all we're going to do is actually calculate that stuff, and then we will add it into the database after with somewhat of a simple function. So to do this, we are going to be going off of one key assumption, and that is that in English that people can read on average 200 words per minute. And this is coming off of Wikipedia, so reading and comprehension. If you look in here, it says 228 plus or minus 30. So we're actually going to go on the low side of that, saying that it's 200 words per minute on average. And also 200 as a number is just a little bit easier for us to work with. Now, this doesn't have to be done only inside of our project itself, right? So something like this you could use for all kinds of things. So, for example, if you were writing a book and you just wanted to calculate how many words were in the book and then also calculate how fast somebody, in theory, would be able to read this book with comprehension, this would be a way that you could do something like that. Granted, there's a lot of ways on how you can do that, and I'm sure some of your word processors can probably figure that stuff out too, but we want to do it in the context of building our blog. So let's go ahead and open up our Sublime Text, and inside of our posts view, this is actually where we are going to end up using the function, but it's not where we're going to create it. Instead, we're going to go into source, and in posts, we're going to make a new file in here, and we're going to call it utils. So utils.py, so utils.py, because this is technically a utility function, right? So it's a function that is going to provide some sort of utility for our project. It's not actually a view, right? So it's not actually rendering some sort of HTML document. Instead, it's going to be giving us some sort of result. So in this case, it's going to give us the count of words as well as the general read time. Okay, so first thing I want to do is import a few things, and I'll explain about these imports in just a second. So date and time, RE, and then from Django.utils.html import strip tags. Okay, so date and time is the date and time function. RE is for regular expressions. So we're actually going to be using regular expressions to parse the data and figure out what our word count actually is. So let's actually make a function first for counting words. So we're just going to call it def count words, and we're going to take an HTML string. We are taking an HTML string because our content will require an HTML string. You can put a normal string in here too, and the same sort of thing will happen. So from here, we want to get our word string, and that's going to strip the tags, so all HTML tags out of our HTML string. So whatever HTML is in there, we want to strip those tags. So we could do this by simply saying some sort of HTML. So H1, this is a title, close off H1, and we could just use this as a test. So we'll just say HTML string is equal to this for now. And then we will actually run this in just a moment. So if that's the case, we're going to go ahead and just get rid of that for a second, because again, we want to test this. And word string, that's what it's going to be. And then we're going to get the count of the length of re.findAll. And this is just a very simple regular expression that's going to find all of the words inside of this word string. That's it. So if you want to learn more about regular expressions, definitely check out joincfe.com/projects. In there, we have a regular expressions course or a crash course to learn and understand about Python regular expressions. So we get the count there. All this is going to do is a list of all the things inside of that word string that are words. So it's not going to count punctuation. It's just looking for characters that are either capitalized letters or lowercase letters. This isn't perfect, but it's going to be good enough for us. So we got a count there. And once we have that count, we can just return that count. And of course, we could get the matching list. So we could say matching words is equal to this. And then finally, the length of that, because that's really just a list. So that's really just breaking it apart so you could see it all in action. So now that we've got this, let's go into our shell, and we're actually going to go into the Python shell. because we have this function of strip tags, and that's coming from Django, so we need to use the Django Python shell. And we're just going to go ahead and copy all this stuff, paste it in here, and then just run count words. And what we got is 4. So technically there are 4 words. This is a title. That's 4. Perfect. So it actually works. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to comment this out. We don't need that anymore, but I am going to now have that argument for HTML string, because that's actually what we want. So this will count the words for us. Now what we want to do is convert this count of words into the actual read time, and we're going to do it in seconds to start, and then we will do it and convert it into minutes as we see fit. So we'll do define get read time. And again, I'm going to use that same sort of HTML string because we're going to be passing it here as well as here. And then this right here, we're going to do count equals to count words of the HTML string. Now, of course, this is going off of the function above it. And then what we want to do is we'll say read time in minutes is equal to the count divided by 200, 0.0. And then again, this is assuming 200 word per minute reading with comprehension, right? So we're just getting what the average is for that count. So this is read time in minutes. So that will give us back the minutes that we want. So once we want read time in seconds would be equal to read time in minutes times 60, because 60 seconds per minute, and it's giving us minutes, so that's from that. And then from here, we just do read time equals to string of date time dot time delta and seconds equals to read time seconds. And then we just return the read time. Cool. So those are our functions. Those will work. We'll use them in just a second. But now that we have this, this will actually return a string of the time. It's not actually returning the date time, because you can actually return a date time object that will give us actual read time. So this is just going to return a string with that specific time that we're going to be working with. So let's go ahead and actually use this in something. And again, I'll explain this HTML string in just a second. So if we go into our post detail, we're going to just try it in here. This is not where it's going to end up, but it's going to be where we'll test it. So from .utils import, and it's get read time. And all we're going to do here is we want to read the instance stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and print out get read time instance.content. Okay, and then I'm going to do one more thing and do print read time instance.get markdown. So instance.content, let's look at the model. And content itself is just a text field, right? So if you remember, we actually used markdown as the text field. So this is not actually what we want to see. Instead, we want rendered HTML document, which is what get markdown does for us. So back into our view, this is actually, the second one is actually right, because this will actually be a string of HTML, where the other one will be a markdown content. So we actually don't even want the other one at all. We just want the actual markdown. Now, the reason we won't end up doing this in the future is because we don't need to process this every single time. Realistically, we only are going to need to process it once, get that read time so we can just display it. But for now, again, we're just going to leave it as this. So let's go back in here, and we're going to refresh into our project. Let's make sure our project's running. So python manage.py and run server. Let's try that again. Okay, refresh in here, and now we've got this. If we look at our terminal, it's giving us some sort of time, right? So this is not even a minute because there's practically no content in here. So let's go ahead and edit it. And I'm just gonna put a bunch of content. I'm just gonna copy this and paste it a lot of times and just have it in here. So we just have this just longer content, more of a piece that might actually be there. Hit create post. And now we have this longer content item here with 144 items. And then if we look back in our terminal, we now see the amount that it would actually be. So this is going to be 1 minute and 48 seconds, right? And then hours would be here. So that's how long that would actually come out to being, which is pretty cool. So we now have a way to get the read time as well as printing it out So in the next one, what we want to do is actually save this into the database and make it just a little bit better to where it's not really giving us a perfectly accurate one, but more of like a rounded up version. So this would actually round up to being 2 minutes read time, right? Again, it's not a perfect solution. It's not going to give it the exact number. And frankly, from a user's perspective, it doesn't need to give an exact number. All right, so if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.